All right, well, good morning. Thanks everybody for being here for our second City Council press conference. I'm Marshall Selberg, the Sioux Falls City Council Chair for a couple more months yet anyway, and we had a really good first press conference about a month ago and good turnout and good response, so thanks again for being here. We're going to cover a couple of topics this morning and then take your questions. Thank you to Jermery Washington, our city clerk, for being here, and then our councilors Pat Starr and Alex Jensen, and Councilor Neitzer was supposed to be here as well, but he had something come up last minute with his job. So you've pretty much got all the old timers here that are short timers, old timers both. Anyway, a couple of things that are going on. We're going to talk about city election, of course, some other current council events going on. We've got Board of Equalization this week, where basically council members sit at a table with the county people and the school board people, and we hear from folks that are basically have a problem with their property taxes and are coming to maybe get those lowered. So that's always a interesting week. So we've got that started yesterday, and we've got a session this afternoon, tomorrow, and Thursday. Let's see what else. Last week I attended the National League of Cities. That's always a good networking event that was out in Washington, D.C. I've been to a few of those, so you try to network with some other folks and city councils and mayors and see if you can bring back some ideas to your city. So I thought that was fruitful. And D.C. is always fun for government wonks or D.C. nerds or political nerds like me who like to do a little sightseeing too. And of course, elections are the focus right now, and Jeremy's going to be the first one to talk about that. But I'd also remind folks that as the new council starts here, of course, the election's a couple weeks away, but when as they prepare for the new council, leadership is always elected as well between the council body. And that's kind of a big deal, and usually there's a contest to it, and some people talk about who wants that position. It's usually a few hours a week and adds up to be quite a bit on your plate. I've done that a couple of times, so we'll look forward to seeing who steps up and wants to be leadership in the upcoming year. So with that, we will lead it off with Jermery Washington. If you want to come and give us an update how we're coming for the upcoming election.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Councilor Selberg. All right. So great news, everybody. Good morning. Thanks for coming. We have everything is on track for the election. Thank goodness. So we don't have any snags, so everything's going along just as we anticipated it would. I just have a few key dates to share with everyone this morning. 25 March. Sorry, I am a Air Force veteran, so I say the dates backwards. So 25 March is the deadline for voter registration, 5 o'clock p.m. And 25 March is also the start of absentee voting. For April, we will be doing the public test of tabulation equipment. That will be down at the Minnehaha Administration Building. The time is still to be determined. 6 April, which is a Saturday between 0800 and noon, is in-person absentee voting, which will be done down at the Minnehaha Administration Building. And 8 April is the last day for in-person absentee voting. And of course, 9 April is, you guessed it, the big day, election day. On the ballot this year, we have 3 races. We have the Sioux Falls School District Board, which is 2 seats. We have City Council at Large, 1 seat, and City Council Northeast, which is also 1 seat. We have 2 unopposed candidates, Northwest and Southwest. 21 May will be the installation ceremony and the start of the terms for the new council members. And a few election challenges that we have this year. Voter turnout has been an ongoing issue of many places, not just Sioux Falls. It's just been going around everywhere. So that's always going to be a challenge. And the next challenge that I've noticed is there's going to be a lot of voters who may not know where their polling locations are this year. So I do want to ask if there's any voters watching, please go visit the voter information portal or contact us at the city clerk's office at 367-8080 or the Minnehaha County Auditor's Office or the Lincoln County Auditor's Office. And I also have a note here about Precinct 1-12 voters, which is down in the southwest part of the city here. With the exception of this precinct, every voter who will be voting in the city's election, they will be voting in the same exact polling location that they will be for the primary and general elections. But precinct 112, they will be voting at a different location for the city's election. They will be voting, I forgot the name of it, sorry. But for the primary general, they'll be voting at a different location than they did the previous year. And the Minnehaha County Auditor has sent out postcards with the QR code reader on there so everybody can scan and look to see where their polling location is. And if you go to the city clerk's web page / elections web page, we have a big giant map that has stars all over the map there. So if you know your precinct, you can find your polling location. Up at the top right, there is a list of all the polling locations with I guess you can call it a key number. And that key number will coincide with the star that's on that map. So if you're in precinct 1, 2, 3, 4, you can go over here and say, okay, precinct 1, 2, oh, right here, star number 7. Then you find star number 7, and there you go. So, and that's pretty much all I have. Are we doing questions now or at the end? Okay, next up is Councilor Pat Starr.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Good morning. Thank you for turning out today. One of the things over my past 8 years on the council that I've been proud of that we've done is we've spent extra time working with our local legislators because it seemed we didn't have that really good working relationship with legislators and coming across with what's important to the city that we need help from the state government to get done. So I wanted to, we've always done a legislative priorities, but it seemed like it was 25 or 30 or 40 things, and it was really difficult to say these are the priorities of the city, and here's all 30 of them. So the last couple of years, we've really pared that list down to what's important to the city. And so I wanted to go through this list a little bit of the 4 or 5 things that we got passed that were really important from our legislative priority. Obviously, Councilor Jensen has been very active in getting a bill passed and now a new law for the Delbridge Museum collection to be able to sell museum collections outside of the state so that we can get things possibly into the right location. So House Bill 1100 is passed and signed by the governor. It was on her desk late last week, so she got through that last pile of them. So veto day, I think, will be a little slow next week. The other that was really interesting is that the Alternative Publications Bill, Senate Bill 75, also passed. And then one of the things that we've talked a lot about in the council over the last year and the last couple of years is the airport funding bill. We've fallen behind at the airport in the number of gates. What do we hear from the airport all the time? When Dan talks in front of the media or talks to the community, it's record boardings, record takeoff record, but we don't have record space keeping up. So being able to build the new parking ramp that is more than double of what the original estimates were, and with construction costs, been able to add 5 new gates. But this $10 million is a small part of what they're going to need over the next few years to catch up. But it's the first time that the state is using general fund dollars. And that is a big precedent to get passed. So we've talked a lot about the airport, but the need for transportation, we like to talk about leisure travel, especially this time of the year, but it's so important as we add corporate and business travelers to our community that need access around the country. So being able to move forward with the airport and the expansion plans for the airport are key. Obviously, as we finish up our wastewater treatment and have a huge construction year with the water reclamation plant, Senate Bill 53 had a $118 million appropriation. And so to cover cost overruns and to complete that project to make sure that we're able to handle wastewater in our community. And the last that was from, that passed from our priority list is the 9/11 surcharge. It was House Bill 1092 that increases the surcharge from $1.25 to $2 per line, but it also included a sunset to July 1st of 2026. So we kind of, the legislature passed a temporary tax increase, but I think that's one that will continue because, again, you've seen in our community the importance of training and metro communications and be able to fund the needs to keep us all safe. And I think you'll see us, one of the priorities that we've had in the past as a council is updating the communication technology across the state and being able to work together between multiple units, because in a mass casualty or large event, each unit, whether it's fire, police, the state, law enforcement, being able to communicate with each other and putting them in the same radio systems is so vital to being able to respond to those type of events. So being able to get that extra funding to provide that was so important to our legislative priorities. So we did have a couple of other things that we wanted to talk about, and I think they passed in varying degrees, or at least the conversation. And again, childcare is going to be one of those things that was huge in our council's legislative priorities. But we will be continuing that conversation where that solution is. I think it's like any major problem or opportunity that we have as a community, it's not one answer. It's a lot of little parts that have to come together. So we have to continue to make incremental changes and progress to go forward with childcare and being able to improve it, because it's one of those things that's going to be not only important to young families, it's also important to employers as part of the workforce, and how do we find those solutions. So I'm betting that will make next year's council legislative priorities as well next year. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Councilor Jensen.
Well, thank you again, and like Pat or Councilor Starr ended on, childcare is going to be a big thing that over the next couple of weeks is really going to come to fruition. The Regulatory Oversight Committee has been looking at childcare and how we interact with childcare as we move forward as a city. Now, I don't think the city has the unlimited budget to go out there and just fund this for families here, so we have to think about it, like Councilor Starr said, in a very methodical way and piecemeal together. We have to increase demand and supply of a lot of different things. But what we know is there's a lot of demand out there for childcare, because what do people want to do in South Dakota? I think per capita, or as a percentage of working families, we have the most mothers and fathers out there in the workforce. And if they want to be out there in the workforce, hey, that's great. So we have to really look at that first off. Second, we have to look at what we can do to increase the supply of people that actually are educated in early childhood care, child daycare, and degrees that are working at that. So we are looking at options with regards to institutions that we may already fund or potentially we don't, to say, can we increase the supply of people that are coming into this educational path, and increase that supply of people that can take care of kids and be educated in that. And I think that's so very important to look at that, because it's a supply and demand thing. This is, just general economics. So then also, as a part of that, the Child Care Collaborative, which was funded through a variety of different organizations, including Ford Sioux Falls, talked about a child care coordinator. Now, I don't think that the Regulatory Oversight Committee really wants to put it as a full-time position, because I don't know if that's the route we're going to go, but we do want some deliverables met. So we might hire someone or have a third-party contract that looks at this to say, hey, here's a deliverable, can you meet it, and can you execute on it? And then we might have 3 or 4 deliverables that we look at. And I think that that's really where we should be as a government, is bringing all of these ideas together and moving forward. Now, what Councilor Pat Starr was talking about with the state, DSS is actually going to be looking at this as well. And they're going to internally fund this from their programming. So not only did we get a majority of our priorities passed through the legislature, we were talking about one that hasn't gotten much credence in the last probably 10 years. And DSS and the work of the good representative senator out of Brookings and the good representative out of here in Sioux Falls, Taylor Rayfeld, they got it passed. And sometimes the best bills come through legislation that is not. Because the Department of Social Services is going to look into this because they think it's an economic development driver. Also, the Governor's Office of Economic Development has granted the Sioux Falls Development Foundation, which is one of our big partners from the city's perspective from economic development, to go and start an accelerator at Startup Sioux Falls, one of the priorities of the city of Sioux Falls and this council for certain. And these two councilors here with me today have also throttled down on that, and we are trying to accomplish that. So those are two, maybe three priorities that we worked through. The other priority when it comes to childcare is looking at in-homes and in-home daycares and how that's changed over the past couple of years. Now, many people like to go to a daycare center, but what I look at is I think there's a place for in-homes, and we can accelerate the growth of that. And why is that tailed off? How can we improve it? And that's where I think this third-party contract, when you talk about it from a professional services contract, can move us forward, okay? So childcare, we're working on it. We're definitely not perfect on it, but it's something that we as a city council prioritize. So it won't be a ton of funding, but we've got to put our thumb on the scale to say, hey, how do we bring this together? So that's what the Regulatory Oversight Committee is working on, and I'm so very proud. Now, on a very different subject, and I'll talk about this very briefly, is our working group that the mayor has put together for the Delbridge collection. I'm so very proud of him for pumping the brakes and bringing this working group to fruition. Now, are there certain things that we'd like noticed a little sooner and a little faster? Yes, absolutely. And we're working to get that noticed. When we have a next working group session, we will definitely have that notice on the city council's page and get that out there to the public, because I think that this conversation is a part of having the public dialogue around it. But I couldn't be more proud of the mayor for stepping back and saying, whew, maybe I shouldn't have, acted that way right away or brought that forward right away. But that's where I think public government works, is in compromise and saying, I was wrong. I need to pump the brakes and I need to look at this. And, if you're talking about the last working group session that wasn't necessarily properly noticed, I could be to blame for that too. So at the end of the day, we're all in this as a team game. It's not a we're trying to get anyone kind of conversation. It's a we're trying to get the best outcome, not only for the Delbridge collection as a whole, but we're trying to get the best outcome for the zoo from a long-term sustainability. And when you look at those two as and, not or, I think that changes the conversation, and that needs to be the message. This could very well be an and. And what the working group is doing is we're working on all of the different things that we can accomplish as a group to bring forward to the city council to say, hey, we've looked at all options and this is the way we think we should go. Now you have the end opinion on that, and we'll vote on that as a council, maybe this session, maybe next session or next term, but those are the things. And I'll end with this and be glad to answer any questions. We should be so thankful to have Becky DeWitt's running our zoo. She's doing such a fantastic job, and she's gone above and beyond to help our working group, to help this situation that we're in. And we should be so proud of her as lions are coming on. She's raised the money to make that happen. We've got bears. We've got a sustainable zoo. And we should look for how we can positively impact this zoo for the future. So I want to personally thank Becky for the work that she's done on this working group, for the work that she's doing at the zoo, and for how she is maintaining this and pushing forward our zoo here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, because on the 26th, which is Tuesday, March 26th, we're getting the long-term vision that they've been putting together for over a year, okay? It's come to the city council meeting because we're going to get their long-term vision on what they think is going on, and I think it's something to get excited about. I haven't seen it in all its detail. I've heard maybe a little bit about it, but come and listen at the informational, because that's the way forward. We're going to work together. We're going to compromise. Not everyone's going to get their position, but I want you guys to take away from this that we're working on all solutions, and we can get a long-term solution for the Delbridge collection as well, and the Brockhouse collection, as well as a long-term sustainability model for the zoo. So I'll leave it at that and give it back to Councilor Selberg for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll open it up for questions, and anybody can jump in or address whoever you like, so.
The city clerk. That one precinct that is going to have to vote in a different location, what's the reason for that?
The church, this is their first time doing an election. Lincoln County reached out to them first, and they agreed to do it for Lincoln County. So I reached out to them as well, so to try to keep everybody voting in the same location. They said, this is the first time we're doing an election in this capacity. We want to see how it goes with the county first. We don't really want to do the city at this time. Thankfully, we still have a good relationship. I'm not holding anything against them, but so we will be contacting them in the future to say, hey, how about this year? And we will be putting signs up on their property to say, the city election or city school election is not here today. Voters need to go to this polling location today. Oh, I also have one other clarification thing. The statement I made earlier about nationwide low voter turnout, I was speaking to municipal elections, not federal and state.
All right, I have a question for Alex. If we could go back to the Delbridge. Why is that such an emotional issue nowadays?
Yeah, I think if you look at the Delbridge collection and when it, came into the city, you're talking about 30 years of it being in the Delbridge Museum. So I think you have a lot of, and before that, it was at West Sioux Hardware. So you have a lot of individuals that have seen this collection for over the past 40-ish plus years. So I think that's one piece of it. Second piece of it, I think process. And that's where the mayor, admitted, hey, better pump the brakes on this and put a working group together and see what we can do as a city council and as a working group and in the public eye. I think that's one of the lessons of this is, understanding the public has a huge impact in this. That's what we saw from the city council's perspective. And the mayor saw that as well and pumped the brakes and said, hey, I'm going to take a second look at this, and I'm going to put a working group together. And if you look at that working group, it's me, Councilor McCurris, we got Jeff Scherschlick on there, Allie Bradner. You got a whole range of people. You got Mick Conlon on there. It's like we've got a good group. You've got Janelle Lust, who's the president of the zoo. So that's a diverse group that is probably well represented throughout the city. So I think that is the number one thing is let's listen to the public, see what the public has to say, and see how we can move this thing forward for not only a positive outcome for the zoo, if they have a different vision, which we'll find out on the 26th, but also a positive vision for the maintaining of the Brockhouse collection and how that looks. We're still waiting for the A&M study to come back, Tom. So when I look at it, we don't have all the data, and that's why we haven't been able to have the conclusion yet, and that's why it's taking so much time is because we've had to get the experts in the room. So I think it's really not that controversial, but you look at process, you look at public input. I think those are the two main things that make it somewhat controversial. But I give kudos to the mayor for saying, hey, I'm going to slow it down and I'm going to listen to these people. So, that's what I'd say, Tom.
All right, Marshall or Pat, would either one of you like to comment on why this is such a tough decision?
Well, I think Councilor Jensen was exactly right. It is part of the fabric of our community. Those of us that grew up seeing the collection at the hardware store, I mean, I'm too young to totally remember it, but I had a distant memory or two of actually seeing the collection. But you had to grow up in the community to understand it. And I think the place that I differ a little bit in this, we pumped the brakes because the public got excited. It was part of every coffee group, everywhere I went. When I went to the grocery store, when I went to church, when I was out in the community, they're like, what are you doing with the Delbridge animals? And people came to the council and they were heard. They were heard, so we had to pump the brakes, and they said they wanted to be involved in the conversation. And last week's meeting was so disappointing that we couldn't tell the public they wanted to be part of it. You know, there was also the legal side of it is what we were holding back for. We had James Moore at the meeting to tell us what was going on from Woods Fuller as part of a contract that he has with the city to talk about the legal side of it. And so there were no handouts. There was nothing you could give to the public. There's a report that's not a report that now we've been told it's part of, you know, whatever legalese that we have. And so what makes people upset in the community is when they think they're secret reports or there are things going on, their government's not listening to them. And that's what happened last week, is that it kind of blew up because we didn't get it properly noticed. And then we fall behind telling the public, well, we did everything legal. We didn't break the law. But that's not the standard we should try to run our government from. You know, the law is here, but open, ethical, transparency is something that we have to go higher for. Just because we don't have to invite the public doesn't mean they shouldn't be included. And that when there's reports that are available, there's information that we can share with the community, we shouldn't hide behind attorney-client privilege and work product and things in legal terms. So again, the public wants to be part of this process. They're forcing their way into making us listen to them. And again, we'll see a big turnout tonight because we have another extension or an amendment to the contract for the Delbridge Museum. So from what I've seen and what the people that are contacting me, they plan on coming tonight and they plan on being heard. I'm glad there wasn't a clock.
Yeah, there's not much more I can add to that. I mean, we've basically, we've heard the people, it's a big deal to them. That's why months ago, we put this task force together, and the mayor put it together, but we obviously all worked as a team to get a group together to really study it, do our due diligence, and make sure the right decisions are being made. It's been a long road, but I've got to hope we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I think everybody's doing their best to be on the up and up and to come to some conclusions here for the people. The mayor gave his explanation on what happened last week. Were any laws broken? No. Could things be done better? I think so. But I appreciate the fact that people like Councilor Jensen and Mercoris have been in the trenches with this work group. I appreciate all the other people. I know the rest of us as a council have taken a number of emails and phone calls. We're trying to do our best to make decisions, but especially for those folks right now, I can't even imagine how much time you guys have spent in that work group over the last few months. So again, a lot of decisions have been made recently. I've got to hope we're getting to the light at the end of the tunnel. We hope so, but I think we listen to the people, and we've definitely, I don't think we're rushing into anything. So that's what I'd have to say on that.
Alex, you talked about pumping the brakes and it became a big deal and there was a huge public outcry. Nobody really expected that. You've gone through this process. You guys have been drugged through it. Everybody's been drugged through it. Then how does this happen again? How is it possible that this meeting, public notice or no public notice, nobody knew about it? It seems like it was done on purpose in secret. How has that happened after everything you've already been through and all the hours you've put in?
That's a great question. And, obviously process is the big question, right, that you're asking about. And stuff like this does happen where, it's not necessarily properly noticed, right? And, from a work group or a park, probably not a parks board, but there are working group and there are conversations happening all the time. Now, what I could say is I could be at fault as well because I knew about the meeting and I could have alerted, our staff and our city clerk to put that on the meeting agenda as well. And, it slipped through the cracks, right, again. And I don't think it was malicious, because I know the people that are on, probably on our side, as well, trying to make the right decision for this. And I think it was just a simple mistake. I really do believe that. And I get that there are all these side stories that might be happening, but I think we need to allow for simple mistakes to happen, especially in public government. And if we want to have the meeting again, I'd be more than happy to have the meeting right here in this room with all of you present. And we're going to have future meetings that we're going to need some public input on this issue. As a working group, we're going to need public input. So we're going to be better about this moving forward. There have been conversations had behind the scenes that we're going to make certain that it's on our city council website, which is where a majority of the people look for this kind of a program. So I believe it was a simple mistake, and that's my belief system. And I expect, like Councilor Starr said, that we will be better as we move forward with this issue, because we have to. We have to be better.
The report, why is there no actual document? Can you explain that?
Which specific report?
The report from the lawyer.
James Moore?
Yeah.
So James Moore and our legal staff have their documents between. So from my understanding, David Fifley has sent all of you, if not, we can get you the document that he has written on an executive summary of what James has put together for us. I know that we, as a city council, have been invited to look at the document, and we've done that, and it is what it says it is. And if you were at the working group, which you weren't, which might not come to this kind of conversation, we wish you guys would have been there. We wish the public would have been there, because I don't think it's such a big story if you had been there. So
What's it say?
well, it says a lot of different things, and I'm not a legal expert, but it allows the working group and the city council and the city of Sioux Falls to have a lot of different options. One of the options would be sending it out of state, now with the new state law changed. One of the options would be looking at it from an A&M study. Which ones can we save? Which ones can't we save? We don't know any of that information, so before we really get into the details of what exactly it says, it gives us a lot of options. And we'll send that to you. I'll make sure that you specifically have that executive summary so that you can speak about it factually.
So it's Dave Fifley's opinion about James Moore's opinion?
I think that would be pretty accurate. Thank you.
You mentioned childcare. Some of you aren't going to be here in a few months. How do you assure the public that this childcare discussion continues and perhaps goes the direction that you've mentioned? Because you're gone.
Yeah, well, I'll take this one because I know what's gonna, likely come out of the working group is we're coming with a solution still in this, on this city council. So we're gonna come to the working group. Councilor Barranco, Nitzert, McCurris, and myself are meeting on Tuesday at 1. It might be Monday at 1. I can't remember. Next week, Monday or Tuesday at 1, and I'll get you the date. But we're going to have some observations or objectives that come out of that meeting so that we can move some of the initiatives forward right away. And with that comes performance indicators, right? We want to make sure that we're hitting on all cylinders. Some of the options might be, a 3-year deal. So we're looking at bringing something still in this council before the end, May 21st, when the new council is sworn in. And then I know Councilor McCurris is very invested in this because he looks at it as not only a economic development driver, but he looks at it as the way that we can get most of our families and kids daycare that they want and that they, need to have. So it's something that will continue in our next council, because he's the vice chair and he'll be around.
I want to jump in. No, but I want to do one thing. One of the places that I've spent some time working a little bit on, again, I talked about pieces of bringing this all together because it is such a complicated issue. One of the things that we haven't talked a lot about is 3, 4, and 5-year-olds who are failing in daycare because of their behavior, because of their family dynamics, the trauma that they've experienced, are getting kicked out of daycare. So we need a place for those kids to get ready for school. It's more than just preschool. The city has a building, the 908 building that we inherited from the county that's across the street from the birdcage. It's part of in that nonprofit area along West Street, but it's set up as a daycare. So one of the conversations that we've also been having is, how do we train daycare workers without giving them large amounts of student loans and debt? But how do we take care of the issues of trauma and behavior and making sure kids are ready to be ready for school so that they're ready to start, so they understand how to function in that type of atmosphere, whether it's a daycare center or it's that classroom and being ready. So one of the things that I'll continue to push forward is that group of people who needs to look at it. I experienced it personally with one of my foster kids. We went through 3 daycares by the time we got her in a safe place, and not because the daycare wasn't a safe place, but she came from an unsafe place. We needed to make her feel loved and understand it in our family dynamic. It's not that hard. Where we were able to get her the care, and all of a sudden I'm finding out all these kids are getting kicked out of daycare because, again, there's a lot of demand for daycare, so you can fill those spots. So again, it's taking that early childhood, training daycare providers to know how to deal with kids who are having ACEs and trauma experiences to move them forward. But you're right. I don't think there's any of us that are leaving the council that aren't going to continue to be active in our community. We were active before we got on the council. You'll hear, I think, from all of us as we move forward to the things that really touch us directly, and the nonprofits and the churches and all of the community that we serve on.
And then if I could, you talked about the passion and the interest in the Delbridge, and yet we have 2 council positions that are unopposed. We have low voter turnout for municipal elections. Is there a disconnect? Or can you offer any comment or explanation for some of that?
I would say if you're going to look at, candidate recruitment, et cetera, I think that's one of the biggest things is getting good candidates, out there. I think we have a really good slate of candidates, even in the unopposed races, and I don't know what they did behind the scenes to make themselves the only candidate in that race. I would always love to see more, and I think Councilor Selberg always talks about trying to get the competition, because where you have competition, you have better results, right? And I would say that those 2, well, in the Southwest, Councilor Selberg was unopposed in his last race as well. So in the Southwest, we have to work on trying to get more candidates in the field. In the Northwest, that's not always been the case. And then in the Northeast, which is Councilor Starr's district, you were unopposed last time too. So as you look at it, we need to engage our young people. And then here's, I think, the biggest thing. You definitely need to be hard on your public servants, but you have to understand that this is a part-time job. And we, some of us run businesses, maybe 2, maybe 3. Some of us have families and other things. We have to make this more appealing. Keep us accountable, no doubt. But it doesn't need to be on the blog sphere about X, Y, and Z, right? That just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And that's where I think the public is, and some of the reasons why you wouldn't want to run is, it's a very divisive place to be. And it doesn't need to be that way. Councilor Starr and I have been on opposite sides of some issues, but we've come to a mutual understanding where that we are going to be at least cordial to each other when we're in front of a press corps and talking about issues that we come along on. Because at the end of the day, I would say 90% of the time, he and I agree on the issues. There's 10% that we very, very differently, and I will not be divisive when it comes to working with my colleagues. And I think that that's one of the main reasons why you don't see people running for office, is because this world is so very hard and critical and judgmental and rude and bullies to the people that are trying to give back to their community, because at the end of the day, none of us up here gain any real incentive to be here other than that we actually care for our community.
I would add to that, I've spoken quite a bit about, as Councilor Jensen said, really pushing competition and having more people engaged in their city government. And I think a lot of people think they have to know everything. And here's the poster child right here, you don't. We all have our sweet spots, but we also have a lot of good staff around us for a lot of the questions we don't know, because it will come at you like a fire hose. But you find your way, you kind of find your groove on the job, and it's really way more pleasurable and a learning experience, and way more good than bad is the simplest way to put it. But some people think, boy, you must get phone calls 24 hours a day and the emails never stop, and I don't know what I'd do if people were driving me crazy about this and that. It is really, it's not that bad. And I think it's events like these that we're trying to start before we walk out the doors, to talk more about the job, to tell people what's involved, to show that there's events, and this is a mayor-strong form of government, and we hear more of the policies coming from the administration and have more press conferences that way, but we need to have councilors come and talk about what they believe in. It's like I say, this council's built like America, Jack. There's 8 different people from 8 different backgrounds with 8 different kind of views and what their particular sweet spot is. So that's how we get together and make laws, and that's the way it is from here all the way out to Washington, where I was last week, which again, by the way, there's opportunities to travel and learn from other people that lead in this whole country and in this state. So yeah, we need to get people engaged. What exactly it takes to get them to come out, I don't know. I've talked about compensation. I think that can maybe help as well, more on the mayor level. I've been on that, but anywho, I don't know that we've got the one thing, but I think there's a number of things we can do to show people what's involved in the job.
I'll change it up a little bit, because I think Councilor Jensen's exactly right, that it's sometimes a full contact sport that we go through, that it doesn't necessarily have to be that way as well, but lots of emotions. But the first thing is, and I talked to a incumbent that may be on the ballot with me, and he's like, I hate asking people for money. I have to go to my friends. If you have to raise $100,000 or more to serve on the Sioux Falls City Council, or you have that impression, or you have to raise $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 to be mayor, I think I wouldn't be surprised that with an open mayor seat in 2 years, that it's not going to take $500,000 to run to be that, and then the strings that come with that. I think it's difficult. But I think the secret is you have to include the people around you. I ref high school basketball, and you guys get tired of hearing me talk about my different stories about how I make friends on the basketball court, but it's the same thing. I've got my 16-year-old daughter this season starting with me, and she's had her experiences and the emotion and the heat and being able to compete in it's different than playing, is what she said to me the other day, so by the time we're done. So it's a tough job, but I think Councilor Selberg is exactly right, that you don't have to know everything. I sat through the council debate the other night, and I'm going, I think I knew more than that when I started 8 years ago, and you know what? I didn't. You think you do, but you just get in and you learn and you try to do the best you can to serve the people that are around you. So,
One last question from me would be, there's a possibility of passenger rail service coming to Sioux Falls. Could I get some feedback from many of the council members on what the council can do to help facilitate that, and how you guys feel about that?
I think it's exciting. I mean, being one of the only states to not have passenger rail, but if you could take passenger rail from Sioux Falls to Rapid City to the Black Hills and the tourist part. But I think we also have some opportunity for some high-speed rail between our tech corridor in Sioux Falls to Madison to Brookings, where I think that would make as much sense as well, or maybe to Mitchell to Pier, to kind of make a little bit of a loop in one of those many conversations that I have with constituents. Can we run a train down the middle of the interstate between the 4 lanes, and how do we get to Brookings? How do we get to Madison, or do we get to Vermilion as part of that? And I think I've had the pleasure of serving on a couple of the Metropolitan Planning Organization and some transportation groups over the last 8 years to say, how do we make things more walkable? How do we encourage bike riding, whether we get e-bikes in this conversation? Too bad Councilor Neitzer didn't make it today, but where do we connect our tech programs and our education programs with the major hub of economic activity in the state? So again, it's there's a tourism visitation type of side of it, but just like the airport, I think there is a demand from the workforce of how do we do that. So I think that's somebody who's going to be around for the next 8 years probably has a better opportunity than I do.
Tom, thanks for the question, and I'd add maybe one thing on top of that, and I would love to see a passenger train from Sioux Falls to the Black Hills and from the Black Hills to the city of Sioux Falls, because I think there are appeals to both, and there's a lot of different things that happen on that. So that's, first off, it would be a priority of mine if I was ever involved. But I think what we have to do is we have to ensure that the city of Sioux Falls talks to our federal delegation, because this thing does not happen without federal funding, right? It just won't happen. So we have to be on the record saying, hey, we hope this happens, but we want you to do it in a fiscally conservative way. Senator Thune, we'd love you to, pull every string that you have to try and make this happen. Senator Rounds, we hope you as well will do the same, as well as Representative Dusty Johnson. So I look at it that way and we've done a really good job of working now with our state, working with our federal delegation, especially if you look at the downtown train tracks that are now turning into these skyscraper buildings in our downtown Sioux Falls. It's going to take time, but I'm hopeful that we can do it, Tom, because if we work with our state delegation as well as our federal delegation, we can do a lot of great things, and hopefully it's passenger train out to the hills.
All right, I think we'll probably wrap it up from there. We don't want to keep you all day, but thanks again for coming out and supporting this. Hopefully we keep the momentum going for the third one next month. Again, we always are going to try to have this on the second Tuesday of every month, so hopefully we see you in April. Thanks to the councilors and Jeremy for being here to answer questions, and have a good Tuesday.